I've had several unsettling encounters with strangers in my home since I was young. Late at night, an old man would forcefully bang on our door, demanding to see me, forcing me to hide within the confines of the house. On another occasion, a man knocked on our door late at night, brandishing a knife, mistakenly believing our house was my neighbor's. These incidents have made me exceptionally wary of opening the front door to anyone and of being alone in the house, particularly during nighttime. However, one evening stands out as the worst of them all. It was around 6 p.m. in November 2018. Hailing from England, the darkness had already enveloped the outside due to the time of year. Having just returned from work, I settled into my upstairs room, engrossed in watching YouTube on my laptop. My mom informed me from downstairs that she was heading out to pick up my brother from work and would make a stop at the gas station on her way back, so she'd be away for a little while. She asked if I wanted to join, but I declined and continued with my video. As she closed the front door and drove out of the driveway, I, being 17 at the time, felt accustomed to the solitude of being home alone at night. I was no stranger to the eerie ambience it brought. However, about 10 minutes later, I started hearing noises from downstairs. Initially dismissing it, I attributed the sounds to my cat noisily searching for food in an empty bowl. Forgetting he was seated at the end of my bed. Pausing my video, I paid more attention to the banging on my back door. It instantly sent shivers down my spine, followed by the distinct sound of keys dangling. I reassured myself, thinking, oh, my mom must have dropped my brother off before heading to the station, and he's just trying to go outside. So, I let the noise persist as I continued watching my video. Despite his occasional bursts of anger, the loud banging wasn't unusual, but it persisted, banging, keys dangling, dropping, then banging again. That's when the fear truly gripped me. I began to doubt it was him. I cautiously left my room and descended the stairs, my senses heightened, carefully attuned to the unsettling noise. It definitely wasn't my brother. As an extremely anxious person, everyone experiences those moments late at night when mysterious sounds evoke the worst fears. I reassured myself that this was just one of those instances. Summoning courage, I walked directly into the kitchen, determined to confront whatever was causing the disturbance. The kitchen door faced the garden, and as I turned the corner, a sudden loud bang and the echo of retreating footsteps startled me. The cat flap had been violently ripped off the door, leaving scattered plastic strewn across the floor. Despite the fear, I attempted to console myself, entertaining the notion that it could be anything other than intruders. Seating myself on the stairs, I dialed my mom's number, hoping to confirm that it wasn't my brother returning home early in a foul mood. However, he answered my mom's phone while still in the car. "Are you home?" I urgently questioned him. Then, my voice quivered with terror as I implored, "Please be serious. Are you home right now?" His response was, "No, what do you want?" Even though he insisted he wasn't, a part of me still clung to the hope that he was merely jesting to frighten me. Yet, he discerned my genuine fear and started to express concern. I conveyed the harrowing events to him. And he erupted, urging me to call the police. Despite not being the protective type, his deep concern was evident. He instructed my mom to hastily return home while summoning the police. Struggling to maintain composure, I provided the authorities with a detailed account of the ongoing situation, all while cowering in my room with the door tightly secured. Soon after, I heard voices and the resumption of doors banging downstairs. They were back. In a state of sheer fear, I sobbed uncontrollably while staying on the line with the dispatcher for what felt like an eternity until my mom, brother, and the police arrived simultaneously. Together, we navigated through the house towards the back door. And the evidence of their intrusion became glaringly apparent. The perpetrators had noticed the keys to the back door in the kitchen, utilized a broom from outside, broke it in half on the door handle, inserted the broom through the cat flap, dislodged the keys, and pulled them through. Fortunately, the stroke of luck worked in our favor, as the broken broom also unintentionally snapped off the door handle, rendering it entirely impossible to open from the outside. Otherwise, they would have gained entry without any hindrance, leaving me unsuspecting in my room. It became evident later that they had been surveilling the house for a while, biding their time until the precise moment they observed my mom's car leaving the driveway. I'm unsure whether they were aware that I was alone, but what I do know is that, following their initial sighting of me and subsequent retreat, they deliberately decided to return. I was working late night in my office, attempting to complete a report due in a few days. To stay energized, I had a cup of tea and was pushing myself to finish the task quickly. Working late was a common occurrence for me due to job demands, and I've always struggled to maintain focus once fatigue starts setting in. While engrossed in my office work, there was a knock at the front door. I got up and glanced down the hallway, puzzled about who might be there at this late hour. Walking to the other end of the house, I peered through the peephole, but there was no one on my porch. Taking a step back, I considered that it might not have been the front door after all. Immersed in my work and on the opposite side of the house, the faint knocking led me to assume it was someone at the door. Despite the uncertainty, I returned to my office and resumed working. Perhaps I should have been more concerned about the source of the knock, but fatigue and the urgency to complete my work took precedence, and it barely crossed my mind. After a few minutes, I remained at the computer, typing away for the better part of an hour. There were no further sounds of knocking, but my exhaustion was intensifying with each passing minute. My productivity dwindled, and my eyes grew heavy. Just as I was contemplating calling it a night, I reached over for my tea. In that moment, I noticed a pair of eyes staring back at me through the window across the room. All I could discern at that instant was that it was a man, but he swiftly retreated from the window as soon as I noticed him. My heart pounded in my chest, and I sat there, my eyes fixed on the window. The unexpected encounter left me almost in a daze. After a moment, I stood up and rushed over to cover the window. I had no idea who that person was or why he was peering into my house, but the fact that it was almost midnight only heightened the terror. I left my office and went to the front of the house, checking the peephole again to see if the person had moved to my front yard, but he was nowhere in sight. Then, I went to a window at the back of the house and surveyed the area, yet there was no one to be seen. Despite the adrenaline coursing through me, I was no longer tired. However, the sudden silence in the house began to unnerve me. Had the man left, or was he still lurking outside? Returning to my office, I grabbed my phone and started heading back to the front door. My plan was to call the police while vigilantly watching the doors and windows. However, as I reached the end of the hallway, a large figure confronted me in the back of the living room. Cloaked in thick clothing to conceal their identity, their eyes were distinct from the ones I had seen in the window. This was someone else. The man wasted no time, charging towards me as I turned and sprinted for my office. I locked the door behind me and pressed my body against it, anticipating their attempts to kick it down. However, as they reached the door, they abruptly halted, standing just outside. I could hear their breathing, followed by pacing back and forth in the hallway. Then, I heard it again, a faint knocking sound on the other side of the house. The man outside the door retraced his steps down the hallway toward the living room. Subsequently, there was silence for a few minutes as I remained pressed against the door, anxiously waiting. I called the police, whispering into my phone and pleading for them to come quickly. After about 5 minutes, I heard the sirens approaching my house. When they unlocked my front door and entered, there were no confrontations. I listened as they moved through the house and eventually reached my door, yet they never encountered either of the men. Even now, I remain uncertain about how the first man gained entry or what the two of them were attempting. I speculate that the knocking served as their means of communication, bridging the gap between inside and outside the house. Yet, this raises questions about the initial knock I heard. The entire ordeal continues to unsettle me, contemplating how long one man had been observing me and how long the other had been inside my house. The situation could have taken a much darker turn for me, and I acknowledge the stroke of luck that spared me. However, it's challenging not to dwell on the possibility of their return, and relying on luck isn't a comforting thought for my safety. Before starting the story, most of you guys who watch me aren't actually subscribed, so if you like the content, please subscribe and hit the bell. This incident took place several years ago when I was living with my ex-boyfriend. We had been in that residence for approximately 1 month when the event transpired. On this particular evening, my ex was out with work colleagues, leaving me home alone. I passed the early evening watching TV and enjoying some takeout. At times, I heard peculiar noises, but each time I tried to concentrate on them to discern their origin, it appeared as though the sounds would cease. As the night progressed, I decided to head upstairs and use a computer for a short while before going to bed. During this period, our phone line had not yet been installed, and I was relying on a pay-as-you-go phone that had run out of credit. This left me with no means to communicate with anyone while I was alone in the house for the night, so there I sat in the bedroom with only a small table lamp casting a faint glow as I typed away on my laptop. That's when the peculiar noises returned. Starting as a gentle rattling, the sound was so faint that I had to strain to confirm whether it was real or my imagination. I turned off my music, attempting to discern the source of the noise. Heading into our bedroom and glancing down to the front door, I found nobody there. Our small yard, surrounded by a high brick wall and featuring a solid wooden gate, remained shrouded in darkness with no discernible sources of light. Despite my efforts to observe, there was nothing visible at the back either. I sat back down and resumed the music. 10 minutes later, I heard a very eerie screeching sound, reminiscent of metal on metal. It was extremely faint, as if whatever was producing the sound was making a concerted effort to remain quiet. At this point, I was more than a little unnerved. In response, I went into our bedroom to retrieve a heavy iron rod we had found in the back of the built-in wardrobe. I refrained from switching on any lights, not wanting to alert any potential intruder to my presence inside the house. It's crucial to note that I had no means of calling for help, and my concern escalated as I contemplated the possibility of someone being in my house, to get a better view of the alley that the house backed onto. I headed into the bathroom. The office, bedroom, and bathroom formed an L shape around the yard, with the bathroom extending further out. Climbing up onto the ledge, I cautiously inched the window open in an attempt to peer into the alley. Despite my efforts, I couldn't see anything, but the whispering grew louder and seemed to be emanating directly from behind my gate. While I couldn't make out complete sentences, I heard enough to surmise that these individuals had observed us moving in and had noted the presence of valuable equipment such as guitars, computers, my DSLR, TV, game consoles, and more. I speculated that they had seen I was home alone and were waiting for me to go to sleep before attempting to gain access to the house. I remained perched there for what felt like an eternity until what seemed like the loudest thud in the world echoed up to me. Presumably, they grew tired of attempting to be stealthy, and one or both of them were forcefully throwing themselves at my gate, trying to break it down. Witnessing it shudder under the blows, I could only imagine the size and strength of these men. Standing at a mere 5 feet 3 inches and weighing around 105 lbs at that point, I was gripped with terror as I watched my gate groan under the stress. Clutching the iron rod tightly, I desperately considered where I could hide from them. Suddenly, a glaring light blinded me initially, and I panicked, dropping out of sight, thinking they were shining a flashlight at the back of the house. But then I heard barking and shouting. Peeking out again, I noticed the house across the alley from us had a floodlight installed, illuminating both their yard, mine, and the alleyway with light. Grumbling and cursing followed, and soon, 2 sets of footsteps hurried down the alley. I remained locked in that bedroom until my ex-boyfriend, inebriated, rolled in at about 4 a.m. I didn't sleep a wink that night. In the morning, when I went into the yard, my gate hung by one hinge, offering easy access from the alley. Scratches covered the keyhole on the back of it, evidence of someone attempting to force the lock. The waking of the house behind us likely prevented a dreadful outcome. And I shudder to think what could have transpired if they hadn't been alerted.